Hello, and welcome to Musings from the Mystics. I'm Marnie.
And I'm Natalie. We are your guides on this crazy and sometimes tumultuous journey we call the human experience.
Each episode will share our musings about the current energetic climate,
how we're navigating these times,
and tips to help you get the most out of your journey.
So join us to be awakened, empowered,
and expand into conscious action. So, welcome back to our regularly scheduled quest. And this week we come to you with Mission Forgiveness.
Ooh,
right?
Yep.
This has so much weight to it. And I think really as healers and coaches, we come across this struggle and issue quite a lot. And there's a lot of resistance that people experience, especially if there's a trauma attached to it.
Yes, because they automatically think if I forgive you, I'm excusing.
Yeah, there's so
what you
much.
did.
Yeah. So what does forgiveness actually mean? How do you do it in a way that feels good to you? Not only with others, but yourself as well. So we're going to dive into, and we're just going to have a conversation about it today. We have no plan.
No.
We have no outline. We're just going to talk about our experiences and give you some tips and reframe and relanguage this word, because it is an important energy to embody. But again, like so many things, I think this word has a lot of preconditioned, pre-programmed energy around it that keeps us from being willing to do it.
It does. And as like I literally just had a client a little while ago that we were just talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness is for you. Mm-hmm. It's actually protection, and it's being selfish, and it's for you. And most people don't understand that part of it either. Like, no, if I forgive you, then I excuse this act, and I want to blame you for this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think it's tied into that being nice, being kind, being selfless, like all of those things. It gets tied into that, and that's misinformation. It's incorrect programming and conditioning of what it actually means. And like you said, forgiveness is for you. It is not really for the other person. Now, that's not to say you couldn't forgive someone to them and release them, let them off the hook if they're feeling burdened by whatever it is that they did. But that isn't the goal.
No, and actually, and you can do it without telling the person to.
Absolutely.
Again, just gave homework to my client that says, write it all out and then rip it up and throw it away. Like, you never have to tell them on the flip side either, because it's for you. And everybody out there might have heard this, and it's pretty common, but when I heard it, it was like this big aha moment. Not forgiving someone is like drinking the poison and expecting they're going to die.
Right, the other person's going to die. Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's what I was that is totally me. Mm-hmm. I did that. So that was a big eye-opener.
We hold on to the trauma, whatever happened, it's also a very 3D low vibrational way of looking at a situation.
Absolutely.
Because we're saying you're responsible for how I feel. So we're giving away our power, mm-hmm. and we're letting them hold that power and control over us as long as we're not willing to forgive. So it's this really low vibrational way of looking at it, and it keeps you silently trapped. It's like carbon monoxide. You don't know what's happening, but it will slowly kill you because you think, well, I'm just not forgiving them and it's about me and they don't know it and I'm not talking about it. But it is like poison in the body. And we have to get out of that mindset of you're responsible for how I feel, and therefore it's your fault that I feel traumatized or this happened. And we're not talking about the logistics of something. If somebody did intentionally do something that hurt you and traumatized you, absolutely. And you cannot stay in that mindset. You cannot stay in that energy of you hurt me and I am the victim forever, because then you never evolve beyond that. So forgiveness is an important piece of that becoming, and this ties into authenticity, because If you're holding on to that past version, that past thing that happened, you're not authentically being you in the moment. And I can hear the people going, but I do feel traumatized and a victim right now. I'm feeling that way. Okay, you need to work through that, because unless you're willing to do that, that's where you'll stay.
Right. And it is. And it again, I know I've already said it. I'm saying it again, because I deal with a lot of people with some severe trauma. Right. So by forgiving, you are not excusing their behavior. You are not saying what you did to me was okay. That is not the purpose of this. The purpose is to let it go.
Yeah. So forgiveness is not saying it's okay. It's not giving someone permission to do it again.
Correct.
It's not erasing your boundaries. It's none of those things. And I think that's what we think. We think, if I forgive you, then I'm left open and vulnerable. And in this case, vulnerable feels like the correct word, vulnerable to that happening again. So it's a defense mechanism, really. I'm not going to forgive you. It's not because you feel so justified, but it's a defense mechanism. It's a firm wall. If I don't forgive you, then you can't cross that line again. But we suggest you have boundaries in different ways that are that are actually stronger and more helpful for you than to hold a grudge against someone else.
And it's simple but not easy. Because again, if it was a very traumatic experience, it's not going to be okay, I'm going to let this go, bye-bye, and be done, because it doesn't work quite like that either. There is a process.
Yeah, the brain's going, what? Right. So I want to talk about how can we reframe what forgiveness means, because it's fine to say, well, I'm drinking the poison and expecting you to die, but there's still attachment to that word. So let's say we don't use that word. Let's use some different language that still releases you, but doesn't give them permission to do it, right? So let's step out of that. And I like to think of this as like, I have a money analogy because everybody can understand money, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody knows money. Everyone has experienced debt at one time or another, owing somebody, credit card, another person money, and what that feels like. And so if you think of forgiveness as someone releasing the debt, can you feel the energy shift in, I no longer owe this anymore? So as long as you're not forgiving someone, right, you are carrying that burden around. It is like a weight. It's a chain around your body, around your wallet, around whatever, right? And you feel it every moment, right? Every day you think about that debt. And we carry burdens of non-forgiveness in this way, very heavily in our souls and in our minds and in our hearts. And if we can say, I am going to release myself from this debt. I don't owe it any more energy. I don't owe it any more time. I don't owe it my life. I get to move on, right? So this is along the lines of letting go, which we talked about before. What does letting go actually mean? It's the releasing of that chain. And it does feel like a ball and chain when you're not forgiving someone for something. It totally
does. And it consumes you on top of that.
It consumes you. So if you think of it like, okay, I'm releasing a debt, you're releasing the debt of them too, right? It allows their energy to move out of your energy field, because as long as you're holding on to that, I'm not going to forgive you, guess what? They are chained to you energetically. It's like a cord that constantly drains you as long as you're not willing to forgive. So if you can think of it as a debt, they owe you something, and you're going to release that debt, and you don't have to think about it anymore. And they aren't attached to you, and they're not pulling on your energy or your wallet, or however you want to look at it, right?
Right.
It's like, I can breathe again.
I'm free. It's freedom. It's freedom. It really is.
Yeah. So some different words, releasing it. I release this trauma. If you don't want to say forgiveness, if forgiveness is too triggering a word, like vulnerability, say, I release this trauma. I'm letting go of this obligation to interact with you in this way, and relanguage it so that it does feel good to you, because what's important is that release of it, right?
is.
Doesn't matter what word you use. You don't have to use forgiveness. I can understand that. Like, I've been in that situation. I've had traumatic things, and I'm like, I'm never forgiving you, or I'll forgive you, but I'm never forgetting it.
Right.
That's the same thing.
Right. No, don't know. That one doesn't work either.
That doesn't work either, right? So I've been there. I've done that. I've said those things. And then it was like, in my energy, like I could never wipe it clean. I always felt dirty from holding on to it. So however you can relanguage it so that it feels good to you, the important thing is to release the attachment to whatever it was.
And it may not be, I'm releasing it. You may have to take a step first and say, I'm willing to release it to get in the right frame of mind, frame of feeling, frame of all of those things. I'm willing to learn how, or I'm willing to release it. You might have to take that little step first and
that's a good point.
Get in the, okay, especially if it's something really traumatic. Maybe you can't release it right this second, but you open yourself up and say, I'm willing to release this, or I'm willing to learn how to release this.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's a big step too.
It is a big step. And the important thing is that you move into that energy of allowing yourself to move forward, because those things hold you so deeply in the past. They hold you down like a weight. And we have to be, if we want to be our most authentic self and ascend, and move into the next phase, we have to be willing to let those things go, however that looks. So maybe it's baby steps, and maybe you get coaching, and maybe you had a good suggestion. I don't know if you want to throw that in at the end, but writing it down and, burning it. Those letters to others that never get sent are powerful.
Yes.
They are powerful tools to allowing you to, most importantly, express your feelings, because often what happens when we're in a situation where someone has hurt us, we feel unheard.
Yes.
We are not able to express ourselves and how we feel, and we want them to feel sorry and bad. We really want people to feel bad for hurting us, right?
And die from the poison.
Die from the poison, right? So there's all these unresolved emotions that are circling around this idea of forgiveness. And it's not the forgiveness. It's the unresolved emotions.
Exactly.
That are keeping us held in that space. So writing it down, writing that letter, expressing, yelling, whatever it is you need to do, and then never sending it, but burning it. You allow the body to release.
Yes.
It's a somatic experience, because often if you cry or you're angry, right, there's physical
there's a big
responses.
Release. Yeah.
And so we have this release that happens, just like the rabbit being chased and its prey. It has to release the adrenaline from being upset. Well, if you're holding on to something for years and years and years and years, you're right, your nervous system's a disaster. And you have to be able to expend that energy and that pent-up emotion in some way. Dancing, screaming into a pillow, hitting. Your son has this kickboxing sort of bag thing, and she let me hit it one day, and I was like, oh my god, I need to spend like an hour here and just like release everything. It's such good therapy to like just beat the hell out of something with a rubber, I don't even know what that thing was, but it was great.
It's called a combat stick.
There we go. Yes, it was great.
yes he has a kicking bag, and we have the stick, and Marnie took full use.
That's a great way to get into that energy of forgiveness, because you expend what you're holding on to. So whatever it takes, writing the letter, crying, screaming, hitting pillows, a combat bag, whatever you need to do to release that energy. And if you're somebody who likes to work out or run, dedicate one of your runs or one of your workouts to a particular person and emotions that you're feeling and the kind of the trauma that you experienced, and let it out through that in a somatic way.
Yes.
Will allow you to move into, you know what, I release myself from this shit.
Yes. And the other thing too is, if you do write it out, the key point here too is don't keep it, don't hold it, rip it up, shred it, burn it, get rid of it. Because when you do the other things, you are able to release. But if you've spent the energy and written it down, the energy is now in that paper as well. So you have to make sure you get rid of that. That's a key step to this as well. Get rid of it when you're finished.
Yeah, I know we have somebody we know who writes it in a journal and then keeps it, and you're like, no. This is not something you want to keep.
No.
This is something you want to express and release.
Yes.
In whatever way is good for you.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
Any way you can.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about forgiveness of others.
Oh, yes.
And what that looks like and how maybe you can move through the energy of forgiving someone else. But one of the other really toxic things we do is we will not forgive ourselves.
And this is probably the harder of the two, believe it or not, because you think you have to have some penance for something that
Your
you've
perceived
done.
mistakes.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm such a terrible person. I gotta live with this for the rest of my life. No, you actually don't. It happened in the past. You can't change it. You can recognize it. You can realize it. And then you can let it go.
Yeah.
Here's something. If you are having trouble forgiving yourself, you can look at what you've done. And you can say to yourself, you were probably just acting out in fear. And if you look at where you were at the time, you can probably understand why you chose what you chose. Still, does it mean you have to pay for it for the rest of your life? Like, can you put a statute of limitations on your crime? Whatever your crime has been? Do you have to pay for it for the rest of your life? It's one of those things because we internalize so much.
Oh, we sit in judgment, judge and jury of ourselves all the time.
And it's a learned thing too. It's
totally
a taught
conditioned.
and learned thing as well.
Yeah, oh, you did bad.
Yeah.
You're a bad person. No, maybe you made a not great choice in the moment, right? Unless you actually committed a crime. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about human things where maybe we do something that hurts another person, but we didn't intentionally hurt somebody else. We just were thinking of ourselves in that moment. But I take us back to the beginning, which is we choose our life and we choose to have lessons within that life. So all those perceived, and I'm air quoting, mistakes that we make are the lessons we chose.
For your expansion.
For your expansion. So you can learn, this works well for me, this doesn't work well for me, this is aligned, this isn't aligned. Oh, when I do this, it affects other people that I love in a bad way. And so I want to choose something else. But just like a child learning to do anything, they touch a hot stove and then they learn never to touch the hot stove again. But that doesn't make them bad.
No.
That is a learning experience.
It's a learning process, right?
And so we do the same things when we make choices of what works or what's in the moment, or we are, like you said, moving out of a place of fear. That's where we are. And I'm not saying it's okay and it's carte blanche to act however you want. I'm saying, hey, okay, having a human experience here, that didn't go like I thought it was going to go, or I didn't think about how that was going to go when I made that choice. And we get to go, all right, I know better. Next time I can do better, versus now I have to hold this guilt and shame forever.
Right. And you hold it way longer against yourself than you would for somebody else. In most cases, again, there's some exceptions to that as well, but we are worse on ourselves. And again, why? Why do you have to hold it for so long?
Yeah. I am not a fan of regret. I don't do regret. What's the point in that? So I can feel bad? Like, I don't want to give myself permission to feel bad. So I don't do regret. And I don't really actually like to use the word mistakes. I made a choice that didn't work out so well. And just rephrasing that, relanguaging how I talk about something gives me like a pathway forward to move without holding myself in judgment. It's forgiving myself, right? Although I wouldn't even need forgiveness, I can just be like, okay, so that didn't work out too well, and make my amends, say my apologies if needed, or just say, okay, not doing that again, you know?
Right.
But it took me a long time to get here.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was not this way when I was younger, right? Everything I did, every reaction someone had to me, I took as I had done something wrong. I wasn't worthy. I wasn't good enough. And I spent a lot of time berating myself and feeling bad. And I'm such a terrible person. And so that's part of the process of that growth and ascension is, yeah, this isn't about me. This wasn't about me. And I don't have to take on something that wasn't about me. So a lot of times we don't even need to forgive ourselves. We need to realize it wasn't our responsibility to start off with.
Right. True.
But there are times when maybe we do need to forgive ourselves. And in this case, you're drinking the poison and hoping you'll die.
Right. This is true.
Which is not helpful, right? So how do we work on forgiving ourselves, Natalie? Do you have some good tips about that?
I do have a couple. Well, back to the writing thing. It's a good one for yourself too. So the journal of whatever it is you think you've done, perceived as being bad, air quotes again, bad, write it out, but get in the feeling of it too. Like it's not just like, oh, okay, I did this. It's fine. I'm letting it go. Tear it up. And no.
You got to be in it.
You got to be in it. The uncomfortable feeling of, okay, why do I feel so bad? Why am I beating myself up? Like, what did I do? Am I a horrible person? And if the answer is yes, it's okay to be yes at this point in time. Get in it. Say, I did this and I feel bad about this and I'm beating myself up because of X, Y, and Z. And get in that emotion. And then after you've written all that stuff out at the end of the paragraph, you can say, okay, why did I choose this? I was here. I was at a lower vibration. I was at a bad point. I let my ego take over, whatever it may be. And it can be any of those things. It could be all of those things. I made this choice at this point in time. And again, if you can't say, I release you and let you go right now, you can say, I'm willing to release you. I'm willing to let you go. Rip it up, throw it away. And you may have to do the process more than once. So that's the other point. If you start with, I'm willing to let it go, or I'm willing to release it, the next time you say, feel into it, can I release it this time? You might have to do it more than once. It's not a one and, oh, bye-bye, see you later. I tap with clients through this. Tapping is that somatic exercise that lets your body know, okay, it's okay for this, it's safe, and then you can release it that way too. There's lots of different ways, but that's a good one.
Yeah. And I think we don't even think about forgiving ourselves, really. I don't think that's even part of the conversation. When we talk about forgiveness, it's usually directed outward, forgiving someone else for doing something. Because I think we just carry the burden of that debt of whatever we did and think that's the way we're supposed to live our life. I made that mistake and now I have to carry this burden of debt forever to myself, but that's not true.
Well, and you also have a little bit of a flip side of that, of the people that are blaming you, that do not want to forgive you. And
yeah, that's a good point.
You're saying, okay, well, they're blaming me for this. They're blaming me for that. Well, okay, are you deep down still blaming yourself? Because if you can't let it go, how do you expect them to let it go either? Like somebody that's in your face, like, well, you did this 10 years ago, and I'm reminding you of it every single day for the rest of your life. Okay, I'm already doing that to myself. Well, if you're already doing it to yourself, they're not going to be able to forget it either. So there's that portion of it too. Like, okay, they're blaming me, but yeah, I kind of think I deserve it.
Oh, yes.
I deserve their blame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we've talked about and touched on taking responsibility and not blaming others for how we feel. And this is part of that, like, kind of crunchy area that has to shift, right? I'm not blaming you anymore. I'm responsible for myself. But the same goes when you're thinking about forgiveness. we have to stop blaming the others, take responsibility for our own part in it, whatever that happens to be. And I'm not talking about like sexual abuse or, massive traumas like that. I'm talking about the little perceived mistakes. You cheated on your husband, or you talked behind your best friend's back, or,
Right.
those things that we tend to like hold on to for so long. We're in that crunchy area of kind of all of this stuff goes together, and it's hard to shift because the majority of the mindset is no, you hold on to it, you don't forgive, and you're responsible for my feelings. So you can't really move into that place of you're not responsible for me, I'm not responsible for you, and still hold on to the not forgiveness piece. You have to be willing to step into that release of all of it, right? They go together. It's a dance, and it feels like, oh my God, I'm the only one who thinks this way, and you may be the only one in your sphere,
Very well, yep.
or your family who thinks this way, and it is hard. I will tell you, it is hard to be in that place. And also, if you're listening and this is resonating, you're being called to be in that place. Somebody has to start the ball rolling in the right direction, right?
Right.
Someone has to shift it. We can't raise the vibration, walk in light, lead with love and peace and all of those things, and still hold on to these old paradigms.
Well, and the other point that I want to make here too, because this is also, thank you for my clients, because I can now say this because several of my clients, like, those lessons that you chose, they're going to keep showing up for you until you release it, let it go. Like, if it was a trauma from, let's say, your parents, okay, your parents are no longer here, but you haven't learned the lesson or forgiven yourself, your spouse that you choose is going to show you the same things, or a sibling, or a friend,
Or a child.
They are going to show you these same things. And in addition to that, your body's going to say, hello, I need out. Seriously, like, the disease, the symptoms of certain things. And like, even my husband, I love you if you're listening. Why would I want to go digging up the past? Well, because your body is telling you that you have to look at this and let it go, or it's going to keep showing up in your face. And that loud knocking door, it's not going away.
Yeah. It will show up. So even if you're not conscious that maybe you're not thinking about this person that you haven't forgiven for something a long time ago, if you don't move into that space, it will show up in your body, like you said, in some sort of dis-ease. And if you're not conscious and aware and awake of what's going on, you're going to run to the doctor and medicate yourself for something that needs to be handled in a different way. Right?
Energetically. Yes.
So you can maybe correct the symptoms you're experiencing, but that underlying cause, which is energetic, is not going to go away unless you face it. And
it's going to keep, not only not go away, it's going to keep showing up, and it's going to get louder. It happened for me. It happened for me this past weekend. I had the same thing. Like, my body was giving me some clues. And then I got it in black and white, and then I was beating myself up. And now you get to go through the forgiveness of, okay, I did this. It wasn't what's right. I wasn't listening. And I had to go through it. I had to go through those same motions myself, and it sucks.
Yeah. I think the important point you're making here is we go through this over and over and over, so you might as well learn how to do it and move through it because it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Especially as we're moving into this new way of thinking and this new way of being. We're going to come across people who aren't forgiving or what, right? You're going to get triggered by it. You're going to see it. It's going to mirror back to you one way or another. So you might as well learn how to do it so that you can be like, okay, I know that wasn't a good choice for me, and I can let it go. I don't have to now like go eat a gallon of ice cream because I did something bad.
Although it sounds like a good idea, maybe.
Right. So a lot of times that if you're overeating, overspending, what are some other things people tend to do? People can also over-exercise. When you're overdoing something in compensation of something, there's something you need to look at. That you are running, hiding from the forgiveness that needs to happen, whether that's outside of yourself or inside of yourself.
Yes. Yes. It's avoidance. Mm-hmm. Oh, avoidance. That's a
yes.
good one.
If you're like over scrolling,
right.
If you're avoiding and looking for distractions, there's something that needs to be looked at, right? That's a sign. So one, it's a habit we've gotten into, but it's also a sign there's something that needs to be addressed if you're in that avoidance modality.
And sometimes distractions are a good thing. So we're not saying there's a fine line between some of the stuff that we talk about too, because sometimes if you're having that traumatic experience and you're re-triggered, a distraction might be the only thing that gets you out of it. So, you're going to need to figure out for yourself what it is and listen to your intuition and your body and all of those things that we have that we are born with. Mm-hmm. They are our superpowers and there are inherent rights that nobody remembers.
They also can't be taken away from you.
Correct.
We have them. And so this comes back to the being authentic, right?
Yes.
Only when you're in a state of constant questioning of, is this me? Does this feel good? Is this right? Is this where I want to go? Is this what I want? Are you going to be able to tell, okay, something's going on here. Something's out of alignment. Something isn't right. And I need to look at it. And maybe I'm in a place where I can't look at it this moment. So maybe a distraction is a good thing.
Right.
But not for hours.
No, right. Right. We're talking 5 minutes.
Yeah. A little distraction so you can come back to center and kind of find your breath and look at it objectively. Right.
Yes.
So the distraction in this case is the pause.
Yes.
That we have talked about many times.
Yes.
Take a pause until you can kind of calmly look and objectively look at what's going on and how you're feeling as to what needs to be addressed. And that's true for forgiveness too, right? If you're feeling like, oh my God, that thing that happened and I'm never going to forgive them. Somebody mentions their name and you're like, like you get really growly worked up and you're like tense and you're mad and kind of fuming inside and thinking, having the internal dialogue. I have lots of internal conversations. So that's how I do it. I know if I'm having a conversation about what happened and how I would respond now versus how I responded then, that's something that needs to be addressed. You need to look at that piece and forgive it. But maybe in that moment, you just need a pause.
Right. Exactly. All about release, all about letting go and
let go of that debt.
Yes, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And again, it can apply to anything and everything in your life.
Yeah. Because it's constantly pulling on your energy. It's like having a hose hooked into your energy field between you and that person that you're not forgiving, and you are sending your energy to them constantly. So it's a drain. They're not taking it from you. You're sending it. And so is that how you want to live, with all these hoses attached to other people, with your energy being siphoned out? No.
Well, and again, the length of time too. Like if you're our ages, which we've been out of high school for a while, and you're still ruminating over something that happened in high school, it's probably time to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if it's you that you're not forgiving, that's like a giant hole in your energy field where energy's just dumping out onto the floor, right? It's just going away and you're leaking and you're not, you're probably overtired, exhausted, don't have energy for things, can't move forward, aren't able to manifest. Do any of these things sound familiar? Like if those things are happening, your energy's leaking because you are not forgiving yourself.
Right.
You're holding on to things you need to grow and learn from and move on.
Right. And if you're still not paying attention, it's moving into that next stage of disease or
physical illness,
physical problems. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which are not fun.
No, they are
Been
not.
there, done that. Lived my story. So, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully this helps open at least a dialogue internally, right? If nothing else, you start to think about, is there somebody I haven't forgiven? Is there situation I haven't forgiven? Is there something I think I did that I need to forgive myself? And move into that space of learning to let it go, be willing to let it go, so that you can shore up your energy field, right? Because you can't have good boundaries if you're leaking energy.
Right.
So all these things tie in together. If you're leaking energy, you don't have good boundaries. So what can you address? What can you look at and say, okay, I don't want to owe that debt anymore. I don't want to pay that debt anymore. And I am going to work through this in whatever I need to do, whether that's talking to someone, whether it's writing a letter, whether it's dedicating a kickboxing session to something, whatever
Right.
it is, so that you can move through. And I want you to stop at the end of that and notice how you feel once you release it. Like, you're going to feel 50 pounds lighter, energetically, emotionally, mentally, because you're not holding on to it anymore.
And the other thing I want to say too is, I made fun of it just a few minutes ago, is the don't go digging up the past or don't go digging into things. But if you sit, writing's good for this too. If you sit and think, is there something I'm holding on to, and you're just writing, the things that come up, you're holding on to. Like, if they just automatically pop into your mind, that means you haven't let them go yet. That's why they popped into your mind. And it's not a digging up. It's a realization of, oh, yeah, I thought
It's
I
been
did
living
this
in my
thing.
subconscious.
Right. I thought I took care of this, but I really didn't, because that was the first thing that popped into my head. And there's a reason it's the first thing that popped into your head.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I will have things that in the moment I let them go as much as I could. I forgave them as much as I could in the moment, and then they'll resurface. I'll be laying in bed and suddenly the story starts to play again. And rather than beating myself up, like, oh my God, why am I still thinking about this? I thought I dealt with it. That is not helpful. I'll say, okay, how do I feel about it now?
Right.
And I will take myself to the next level of forgiveness and, okay, next level of understanding for myself, because at the time maybe I was only capable of so much understanding and so much forgiveness, and that's where I was. And then, months later, I'm like, okay, now I have a newer perspective. I have a different feeling. Okay. And more importantly, I have a deeper realization about myself, a deeper awareness of myself and what it meant and how I feel about it. And I can let it go a little bit more. So each time, if it's not something you can let go of immediately, and most things that we hold on to, they're not, they're usually multi-layered, and
Absolutely.
and we've built on top of them, one trauma on top of another, one situation on top of another. So allow yourself to, each time it does arise, to look at it again with fresh eyes, a deeper awareness of self. And okay, and this is okay, now I'm learning this about myself. So actually, I've had a situation where that happened, and each time it comes into my mind, rather than it being a negative experience or something bad, I have a deeper awareness of myself, a deeper understanding of, oh, this is why it really upset me. This is why it really triggered me. Okay, there's another layer of evolvement that happens for myself. And then I can move through the memory without it being traumatic. I go, okay, now I have a deeper awareness. Okay, and I can let this go a little bit more. So it becomes a learning experience.
Yes.
That is really deep and meaningful and transformative.
It does.
So that is also a possibility.
It is, because it's your mirror, and you can look at that and say, what is my lesson here? What can I take away from this?
Yeah.
And you're right. When you're in the heat of the moment, you might have a limitation on how far you can forgive or how far you can go. And then it will come up again, and you can say, okay, I can see you for what you are. What is my lesson in this? What was I trying to learn from this experience, kind of thing. It's those questions, as you said. Question.
Yeah. So I think one of the points of all of these missions is that they're an ever-evolving process. right? That we continue to move. Nothing is one and done. There's not like, okay, I'm going to do this one thing and I never have to do it again. It's an evolving process. So how we forgive ourselves, how we forgive others is an evolving process.
And they're actually all intertwined. I
Yes.
mean, you hear us as we're talking, we're like, oh, we said this last week. And oh, we said this a couple episodes ago. Like, some of the same things keep coming up because they apply to lots of different aspects of ourselves.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So take this, do what you will with it, but
Take a deep breath.
right?
Forgive yourself. And if you don't like that word, find a word, a phrase, a languaging that works for you, that you can dive into, that feels nourishing and healing.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us. Until next week, in peace and love and light, this is Marnie.
And much love and appreciation. This is Natalie.